"My ribs are already broken," she whispered. Yet he held her through the pain. The bullet had already grazed her side when she fell from her horse. Katie Morgan hit the rocky ground hard, the impact stealing her breath and sending fire through her chest. She gasped, trying to pull air into her lungs, but every attempt felt like knives cutting deeper. Blood soaked through her shirt from the gunshot wound, but that pain was nothing compared to the crushing agony in her ribs. Hooves thundered behind her. The Rodriguez gang wasn't going to stop. They'd already killed her father and stolen the cattle. Now they wanted her dead too, the last witness to their crime. Katie tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. Her vision blurred as she looked across the desert landscape, searching for any kind of shelter. A shadow fell over her. She reached for her revolver, but strong hands caught her wrists. "Easy now," a deep voice said. "I'm not with them." Katie's vision cleared enough to see a man in a dusty brown hat kneeling beside her. His face was weathered, his eyes sharp and calculating. "Can you ride?" "I can barely breathe," Katie managed to whisper, wincing as she spoke. The man glanced over his shoulder. The dust cloud from the approaching riders was getting closer. He made a decision quickly, scooping her up despite her cry of pain. Every movement sent agony through her torso, but he didn't stop. He carried her to his horse, a massive roan stallion, and somehow managed to get them both into the saddle. "Hold on to me," he commanded, wrapping her arms around his waist. Katie pressed her face against his back, feeling every jarring step as the horse broke into a gallop. The pain was unbearable, but the sound of gunfire behind them was worse. Bullets whizzed past, striking rocks and kicking up dirt. The stranger leaned forward, urging his horse faster, weaving between boulders and scrub brush. They rode hard for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Katie's consciousness faded in and out, the world becoming a blur of pain and motion. When the horse finally slowed, she realized they'd entered a narrow canyon. The walls rose high on either side, providing cover from their pursuers. The man dismounted and carefully lifted Katie down. She couldn't hold back the scream that tore from her throat as he moved her. He laid her gently on a patch of sandy ground in the shade of an overhang. "I know it hurts," he said quietly, "but I need to look at that wound." Katie nodded weakly. Through the haze of pain, she studied her rescuer. He was probably in his mid-30s, tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin. His hands were steady as he examined the bullet graze on her side. "This isn't too bad," he said. "Went right through the flesh. But something else is wrong, isn't it?" "My ribs," Katie whispered. "They're already broken." The admission came with a wave of despair. She'd been thrown from a horse 2 weeks ago, cracking 3 ribs on her left side. The doctor in town had wrapped them and told her to rest for at least a month. But then the Rodriguez gang had shown up, and there'd been no time for rest. Her father had needed her help defending their ranch. The stranger's jaw tightened. That fall just now probably made it worse. He reached for his canteen, wetting a cloth to clean the bullet wound. Katie hissed through her teeth, her body going rigid. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "I have to clean it, or infection will kill you before those broken ribs do." "Who are you?" Katie managed to ask between shallow breaths. Speaking was difficult, each word requiring careful effort to avoid moving her chest too much. "Name's Cole Bennett," he said, working quickly but carefully. "I was tracking the Rodriguez gang when I heard the shooting. Saw them chasing you." He paused, meeting her eyes. "Saw what they did to your ranch, too. I'm sorry about your father." Tears stung Katie's eyes, but she blinked them back. There'd be time to grieve later if she survived. "They took everything," she said. 200 head of cattle. All we had." Cole nodded, finishing with the bullet wound and reaching for bandages from his saddlebag. "The Rodriguez brothers have been terrorizing this territory for months. Rangers have been after them, but they're slippery." He helped her sit up slightly, and Katie bit her lip hard enough to taste blood as the movement sent fresh waves of pain through her chest. "This is going to hurt," Cole warned, beginning to wrap the bandage around her torso. Katie gripped his arm, her fingers digging in. "My ribs are already broken," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I can't take much more." Cole paused, his expression softening. Then, surprising her, he adjusted his position and carefully pulled her against his chest, supporting her weight while he worked. "I've got you," he said quietly. "Just breathe as shallow as you can. I'll be quick." Having someone hold her, even a stranger, made the pain somehow more bearable. Katie closed her eyes and focused on the steady rhythm of Cole's heartbeat against her ear. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, securing the bandages without pulling them too tight. When he finished, he didn't immediately let go. Instead, he held her there in the shade, one arm supporting her back while the other kept her steady. Those men will be looking for us, Katie said after a moment. You should leave me here. Save yourself. Not a chance, Cole replied firmly. Besides, I've been hunting the Rodriguez gang for 3 months. You're my best lead to finding their hideout. He shifted slightly, making her more comfortable. But more than that, I don't leave wounded people to die. That's not who I am. Katie wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her. The adrenaline that had kept her going was fading, leaving only pain and weariness behind. Thank you, she whispered. Rest while you can, Cole said. When it gets dark, we'll move again. There's an old mining camp about 10 miles north. We can hole up there until you're stronger. He glanced toward the canyon entrance, his hand resting on his revolver. I'll keep watch. Katie's eyes drifted closed despite her best efforts to stay alert. The last thing she felt before unconsciousness claimed her was Cole's steady presence, holding her through the pain, keeping her safe in a world that had suddenly become very dangerous. The sun was setting when Katie woke. Her ribs still screamed with every breath, but the sharp edge of panic had dulled. Cole was exactly where he'd been before, watching the canyon entrance with alert eyes. He noticed her stirring and looked down at her. How are you feeling? Like I got trampled by a stampede, Katie said honestly. She tried to shift position and immediately regretted it. Cole's arm tightened around her, keeping her from moving too much. How long was I out? Couple hours, Cole replied. The Rodriguez gang rode past about an hour ago. They're searching, but they haven't found this canyon yet. He offered her his canteen. Drank, you've lost blood and you need to stay hydrated. Katie took small sips, grateful for the cool water. As her head cleared, reality set in. Her father was dead. Her home was destroyed. She was injured and being hunted by killers. But she was alive, and she had help. That was more than she'd had a few hours ago. When we get to that mining camp, Katie said, determination hardening her voice despite the pain, I want you to teach me how to track them, the Rodriguez gang. I want to help you find them. Cole studied her face for a long moment. You're in no condition to go after anyone. They murdered my father, Katie said, her voice low and fierce. They destroyed everything I had. I'm going after them whether you help me or not. But I'd rather do it with someone who knows what they're doing. A slow smile crossed Cole's face. You've got fire in you. I respect that. He nodded. All right. When you can ride without passing out, we'll go after them together. But first, we survive the night and get you somewhere safe to heal. Deal? Deal? Katie agreed. As darkness fell over the canyon, Cole carefully helped Katie to her feet and lifted her onto his horse. Every movement was agony, but Katie gritted her teeth and endured it. Cole mounted behind her, one arm wrapped protectively around her waist, holding her secure against his chest. The pressure on her ribs was almost unbearable, but his steady presence kept her grounded. They rode through the night, Cole navigating by starlight through terrain he seemed to know well. Katie drifted in and out of consciousness, held upright only by Cole's strong arm and the careful way he maneuvered his horse to avoid the roughest ground. Each time she woke, his voice was there, quiet and reassuring. Almost there, he'd say. Or, you're doing fine. Just hold on a little longer. By the time they reached the abandoned mining camp, Katie was beyond exhausted. Cole carried her into one of the more intact structures, a small cabin that had somehow survived years of neglect. He laid her on a makeshift bed of blankets he pulled from his saddlebags, then built a small fire in the old stone fireplace. My ribs are already broken, Katie whispered again, as Cole checked her bandages. The words had become almost a mantra, a reminder of just how fragile she was right now. But this time, Cole's response was different. He sat beside her and took her hand, his callous fingers gentle. Yes, they are, he said simply. But broken doesn't mean finished. Broken things can heal. And while they do, I'll hold you through the pain. You're not alone in this anymore, Katie Morgan. I give you my word. In that moment, lying in an abandoned mining camp with broken ribs and a bullet wound, being hunted by murderers, Katie felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. She squeezed Cole's hand and closed her eyes, letting sleep claim her once more. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new pain, new dangers, but for tonight, she was safe. And that was enough. The morning sun filtered through the gaps in the cabin's old wooden walls, casting stripes of light across Katie's face. She woke slowly, aware first of the pain in her ribs, then of the smell of coffee brewing. Cole was crouched by the fireplace, pouring dark liquid into 2 tin cups. He noticed her stirring and brought one over. Drink this, he said, helping her sit up enough to sip without choking. The movement sent fresh pain through her chest, but Katie was getting used to it. She'd have to learn to function through the agony if she wanted to survive. The coffee was strong and bitter, but it cleared the fog from her mind. "How far behind do you think they are?" Katie asked, her voice still rough from sleep and pain. "If we're lucky, they lost our trail in the dark," Cole replied. He sat on an old crate near the bed, his rifle within easy reach. "But the Rodriguez brothers aren't stupid. They'll figure out we headed north eventually. We've got maybe a day, maybe two, before they find this place." Katie processed this information, trying to think strategically despite the pain. "So we can't stay long." "No," Cole agreed, "but you need rest if you're going to heal. And I need to scout the area, see if I can pick up their trail." He studied her carefully. "I'm going to head out for a few hours. There's water, food, and ammunition if you need it. Can you handle being alone?" Every instinct screamed at Katie to say no, to beg him not to leave her defenseless. But she'd been raised on a ranch, had learned to shoot before she learned to read. She wouldn't be helpless. "I can handle it," she said with more confidence than she felt. Cole nodded, respect clear in his eyes. He showed her where he'd placed her revolver within reach, checked her bandages one more time, and then headed for the door. He paused at the threshold. "If anyone comes and it's not me, you shoot first and ask questions later." "Understood," Katie replied. After Cole left, the cabin felt much larger and more ominous. Every creak of settling wood made Katie's hand drift toward her gun. She tried to rest, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. Images of her father's death played behind her closed eyelids. The sound of gunfire, the smell of smoke from their burning ranch house, the cold look in Diego Rodriguez's eyes as he'd given the order to kill everyone. Katie forced herself to take slow, shallow breaths, trying to manage the pain. The doctor had told her that broken ribs needed time and rest to heal properly. Moving around too much could cause the breaks to worsen, could even puncture a lung if she was unlucky. But staying still while killers hunted her wasn't really an option either. She spent the morning alternating between dozing and keeping watch through the cabin's single grimy window. The landscape outside was harsh and beautiful, all red rock and sparse vegetation. It was the kind of country that could kill you if you weren't careful, but it was also home. Katie had lived her entire 23 years in this territory. She knew its dangers and its secrets. Around midday, she heard hoofbeats. Katie's hand closed around her revolver, her heart pounding despite the pain it caused in her chest. She positioned herself where she could see the door, the gun steady in her grip. The footsteps approached, and then Cole's voice called out, "It's me! Don't shoot!" Relief flooded through Katie as he entered. Cole carried supplies, including fresh bandages and what looked like whiskey. "Found an old trading post about 5 miles east," he explained. "Traded for some things we need?" He set everything down and approached Katie carefully. "How are you holding up?" "I'm alive," Katie said, which was about the best she could offer. "Did you find any sign of them?" Cole's expression darkened. "Yeah. They've got a camp about 15 miles southwest of here. I counted at least 8 men, maybe more." He pulled out a piece of paper and began sketching a rough map. "They've got your cattle penned in a canyon. Looks like they're planning to move them soon, probably to sell across the border." Katie leaned forward to look at the map, ignoring the pain the movement caused. 8 men. That's more than usual for the Rodriguez gang. "They've been recruiting," Cole explained. "Word is they're planning something big. Your ranch wasn't their first hit this month, and it won't be their last unless someone stops them." He met her eyes. "The Rangers are 3 days away at least. By then, the gang will be gone with your cattle and whatever else they can steal." "So what do we do?" Katie asked. Cole was quiet for a moment, clearly weighing their options. "The smart thing would be to wait for the Rangers. Get you healed up, let the law handle it." "But," Katie prompted, seeing the hesitation in his face. "But I've been tracking these men for 3 months," Cole said, frustration evident in his voice. "They killed my brother in a raid on his ranch. I made a promise to bring them to justice, and I intend to keep it." He looked at Katie seriously. "I understand if you want to wait for the Rangers. What I'm planning is dangerous, probably stupid. You're already hurt, and I have no right to ask you to risk your life." Katie didn't hesitate. "I'm in. Whatever you're planning, I'm in." "You can barely move without wincing," Cole pointed out. "How are you going to fight?" "I'm a better shot than most men I know," Katie said firmly. "My ribs are broken, not my hands. If you get me into position, I can shoot." She could see Cole considering it, so she pressed on. "You need help." 8 men is too many for one person, even someone as skilled as you seem to be. And I need this. I need to see them pay for what they did." Cole studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, but we do this smart. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. We hit them when they're most vulnerable, and we have the advantage. He pulled out the map again. I've got an idea, but you're not going to like it. Tell me, Katie said. Over the next several hours, Cole laid out his plan. It was risky, dangerous, and relied on precise timing, but it could work. They'd wait until nightfall, then move into position above the canyon where the Rodriguez gang had camped. The high ground would give Katie a vantage point to provide covering fire while Cole moved in closer. Their goal wasn't to take on all 8 men, just to create enough chaos to free the cattle and scatter the gang. If we can stampede the cattle through their camp, it'll force them to scatter, Cole explained. In the confusion, we can pick off the leaders. Without Diego and his brother Carlos, the rest will probably run. Katie absorbed all of this, committing the plan to memory. When do we leave? Sunset, Cole said. That gives you a few more hours to rest. You're going to need your strength. As the day wore on, Cole helped Katie practice moving with her injuries. Every step was agony, but she forced herself to push through it. She'd have to be able to ride, to climb into position, to hold a rifle steady despite the pain. Cole was patient, helping her find ways to move that minimized the stress on her broken ribs. You're tougher than most men I've ridden with, Cole said at one point, watching Katie grit her teeth through another painful movement. My father raised me to be tough, Katie replied. He said the frontier doesn't forgive weakness. She paused, swallowing hard against the grief that threatened to overwhelm her. He deserved better than what happened to him. Cole's hand settled on her shoulder, gentle and reassuring. We'll make it right, I promise you that. As sunset approached, they prepared for the ride. Cole helped Katie into the saddle, and despite his careful handling, she couldn't suppress a gasp of pain. He mounted behind her again, his arm around her waist providing support. They rode slowly, conserving the horse's strength and giving Katie time to manage the pain. The landscape turned golden in the fading light, then purple as the sun dipped below the horizon. Stars began to emerge, bright and clear in the desert sky. Under different circumstances, it would have been beautiful. But all Katie could think about was what lay ahead. They reached a rocky outcropping above the canyon around midnight. Cole helped Katie dismount and led her to a position behind a large boulder. From here, she had a clear view of the camp below. Firelight flickered, and she could see men moving around. The cattle were indeed penned in the narrow end of the canyon, just as Cole had described. Remember, Cole whispered, his face close to hers. You start shooting when you hear my signal. 3 shots, rapid fire. That's when the cattle stampede begins. He pressed a rifle into her hands, along with extra ammunition. Aim for anyone who tries to organize the others. Don't expose yourself. If things go wrong, you ride out of here and get to the Rangers. Don't wait for me. I'm not leaving you, Katie said firmly. Cole smiled slightly. Stubborn, but there was admiration in his voice. He squeezed her hand once, then disappeared into the darkness, moving with the silence of someone who'd done this many times before. Katie settled into position, the rifle stock pressed against her shoulder. The pain in her ribs was a constant burning throb, but she forced herself to breathe steadily, to remain calm. Below, the Rodriguez gang members were settling in for the night. She could see Diego Rodriguez by the largest fire, recognizable by the scar that ran down his left cheek. Carlos Rodriguez sat nearby, cleaning a rifle. Time seemed to slow down. Katie's entire world narrowed to the view through her rifle sight and the pain in her chest. She thought about her father, about everything that had been stolen from her. The anger that rose up was almost strong enough to overwhelm the pain. Then she heard it. 3 rapid gunshots from the far end of the canyon. Cole's signal. Almost immediately there was a rumbling sound. The cattle, spooked by the gunfire and whatever Cole had done, began to move. The rumble became a roar as hundreds of animals stampeded directly toward the gang's camp. Chaos erupted below. Men scrambled for their horses, shouting in panic. Katie took aim at Diego Rodriguez and squeezed the trigger. The rifle's kick sent pain lancing through her ribs, but her shot was true. Diego went down, clutching his leg. She shifted aim to Carlos, firing again. He dove for cover, and she wasn't sure if she'd hit him or not. The cattle thundered through the camp, destroying tents and scattering supplies. Men fired wildly into the air, trying to turn the stampede, but it was useless. Katie continued to fire, picking her targets carefully. One man who tried to rally the others. Another who was bringing his rifle to bear on where Cole must be positioned. Then she saw Cole moving through the chaos like a ghost. He'd used the stampede to get right into the camp. Katie watched him take down 2 men in quick succession, his movements precise and deadly. But then something went wrong. One of the gang members must have spotted him, because suddenly there were 3 men converging on his position. Katie didn't hesitate. She fired 3 quick shots, dropping 2 of the men. But the third got to Cole, and they went down in a tangle of limbs. Katie tried to get a clear shot, but they were too close together, moving too fast. Her heart pounded as she watched Cole struggle with his attacker. Then Cole's knife flashed in the firelight, and the other man went still. Cole rolled away, breathing hard, but he was up again immediately, scanning for more threats. The remaining gang members were fleeing on horseback, disappearing into the night. The cattle had scattered in all directions, the stampede breaking up as the animals spread across the open desert. Katie watched as Cole checked each downed man, making sure none of them were going to be a threat. Then he looked up toward her position and gave the signal, all clear. Katie tried to stand, but the combination of pain and adrenaline crash made her legs give out. She slumped against the boulder, the rifle clattering to the ground beside her. She must have blacked out for a moment, because the next thing she knew, Cole was beside her, his hands on her face. Katie, look at me." His voice was urgent, worried. She forced her eyes open, trying to focus on his face. "Are you hit?" "No," Katie managed to whisper. "Just my ribs. The recoil." Every breath was like being stabbed. She'd pushed too hard, moved too much. She could feel something wrong inside her chest, something shifted or torn. Cole cursed softly. "We need to get you to a doctor. Now." He scooped her up as gently as he could, but even his careful handling made Katie cry out in pain. "I know," he said, his voice tight. "I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I never should have let you come." "Had to," Katie gasped out. "Had to see it through." "You're bleeding again," Cole said, noticing the red stain spreading across her shirt. The bullet wound had reopened with all the movement and strain. He carried her to his horse and somehow got them both mounted. Katie was beyond caring about the pain now. Everything hurt so much that individual injuries blurred together into one vast ocean of agony. They rode through the night, Cole pushing his horse hard. Katie drifted in and out of consciousness, held in place only by Cole's iron grip around her waist. She heard him talking to her, his voice a constant stream of reassurance and encouragement, but the words didn't quite make sense anymore. At some point, there were more voices. Lights, hands that weren't Cole's touching her. Katie tried to fight, but she was too weak. "It's okay," Cole's voice cut through the confusion. "It's the doctor. You're safe. We made it to town." The next hours were a blur of pain and darkness. Katie was vaguely aware of being examined, of bandages being changed, of something bitter being forced between her lips. She heard the doctor talking to Cole in low, serious tones. Words like punctured lung and internal bleeding and touch and go filtered through the haze. Then there was nothing but darkness and pain, and the sound of her own labored breathing. Time lost all meaning. Sometimes when she surfaced toward consciousness, she felt Cole's hand holding hers. Other times she was alone with just the pain. Her broken ribs had become something more serious, a threat to her life rather than just an injury. "My ribs are already broken," she tried to whisper during one of her more lucid moments, though she wasn't sure if anyone heard her. It was important somehow that people understood. This wasn't new pain. It had started before, and everything else had just made it worse. But there was a hand in hers, warm and strong. Cole's voice in her ear, steady as stone. "I know, but you're going to heal."
"I'm going to get through this. I'm not going anywhere."
"I'll hold you through the pain for as long as it takes." Katie wanted to believe him. She wanted to fight. But the darkness was so heavy, and she was so tired. She let herself sink into it, hoping that when she woke again, the pain would be less and the world would make sense. If she woke again. The fever came in the night, hot and vicious. Katie's world became a twisted nightmare of heat and cold, pain and delirium. She saw her father's face in the shadows, heard his voice calling to her. She saw Diego Rodriguez standing over her, gun raised. She saw the cattle stampeding endlessly, an eternal thunder of hooves and dust. Through it all, there was one constant. Cole's hand in hers, his voice pulling her back from the edge whenever she drifted too far. "Stay with me, Katie. Don't you dare give up now. We didn't come this far for you to quit on me." Sometimes she was lucid enough to respond, to squeeze his hand weakly. Other times she was lost in the fever dreams, fighting battles that had already been won or lost. The doctor came and went, his face grave. Katie heard him tell Cole that the next 48 hours would be critical. If the infection didn't break, if her lung didn't heal properly, she wouldn't make it. But Katie Morgan hadn't survived a bullet, broken ribs, and a vengeful gang just to die in a soft bed. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the pain and the fever, was the same iron will that had kept her fighting when everything seemed lost. She held on to that, held on to Cole's hand, and refused to let go. On the third day, the fever broke. Katie woke to find pale morning light streaming through a window she didn't recognize. The pain in her chest was still there, sharp and demanding, but it was different now. Less desperate, more manageable. She could breathe without feeling like she was drowning. Cole was slumped in a chair beside the bed, clearly exhausted. He'd been there the whole time, she realized, watching over her, holding her hand through the worst of it. As if sensing her gaze, his eyes opened. For a moment he just stared at her, as if afraid she might be another fever dream. Then a slow smile crossed his face. "Welcome back," he said, his voice rough with emotion and fatigue. "How long?" Katie asked. Her voice was barely a whisper, her throat dry and raw. 5 days, Cole replied, reaching for a water glass and helping her take small sips. "You had us all scared there for a while. The doctor said it was the worst lung injury he'd seen anyone survive." Katie processed this slowly. 5 days. She'd lost 5 days to darkness and fever. "The Rodriguez gang?" "Diego's dead," Cole said. "You got him in the leg, but he bled out before help could arrive. Carlos and 2 others are in custody. The Rangers picked them up trying to cross the border. The rest scattered and probably won't show their faces in this territory again." He paused, then added, "They recovered about half of your cattle. The rest ran off during the stampede, but folks are still finding them. The ranch association is keeping them safe until you're well enough to claim them." Tears stung Katie's eyes, but she blinked them back. It wasn't everything they'd taken from her, but it was something. A chance to rebuild. "My father?" "Buried proper," Cole said gently. "I made sure of it. The whole town turned out." Katie nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. They sat in silence for a moment, just breathing together. Finally, Katie said, "Thank you for everything. For saving me, for staying with me." Cole's hand found hers again, his grip warm and steady. "I told you I'd hold you through the pain." "I meant it." He hesitated, then added, "Katie, when you're healed up, I was thinking you'll need help rebuilding the ranch. And I've been drifting for a while now, since my brother died. I could use a place to settle down, if you'd have me." Katie looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd risked his life for her, who'd held her hand through the darkest hours, who'd promised to stay and had kept that promise. She thought about the ranch, empty now without her father. She thought about all the work that would need to be done, all the healing that would have to happen. "I'd like that," she said simply. Cole's smile was like sunrise breaking over the desert. Then it settled. Partners, Katie agreed. The road to recovery was long and difficult. Katie spent 2 more weeks in the doctor's care before she was strong enough to leave the bed. Another month passed before she could ride a horse without feeling like her chest would split open. The broken ribs healed slowly, the punctured lung even slower. There were days when the pain made her want to give up, when the weight of everything she'd lost threatened to crush her. But Cole was there through all of it. He visited every day, bringing her books and news from town. He made arrangements for the ranch, hiring hands to keep it running until Katie could take over again. He sat with her through the nightmares that still came, holding her hand until she fell back asleep. He never asked for anything in return, never pressured her for more than she was ready to give. Gradually, Katie's strength returned. She started taking short walks, then longer ones. She practiced shooting again, rebuilding the skills that had saved both their lives. And, slowly, carefully, she started planning for the future. The ranch would need repairs. They'd need to rebuild the herd, fix the fences, hire reliable hands. It was overwhelming, but with Cole's help, it seemed possible. 3 months after the raid, Katie Morgan rode back to her ranch for the first time. Cole rode beside her, steady and sure. The buildings were damaged but still standing. The land was still there, still beautiful in its harsh way. It would take years to rebuild what had been lost, but Katie was ready for that challenge. As they stood on the porch of the ranch house, looking out over the land that had been in Katie's family for 2 generations, Cole turned to her. "Your ribs healing up okay?" Katie smiled, pressing a hand to her side. The pain was mostly gone now, just the occasional twinge when the weather changed or she moved wrong. "Yeah, finally." She looked at Cole. This man who'd become so much more than just her rescuer. "Thank you for holding me through it all. I don't think I could have made it without you." Cole reached out and gently took her hand, a gesture as natural as breathing now. "You're stronger than you know, Katie Morgan. You would have made it, but I'm glad I was there anyway." They stood there as the sun set over the desert, 2 survivors planning a future neither had expected. The pain wasn't entirely gone, would probably never be entirely gone, but it was bearable now. And Katie had learned that sometimes the broken places, when they healed, became the strongest parts of all. The ranch house creaked in the evening wind, and Katie felt something settle in her chest. Not peace exactly, not yet, but something close to it. A sense that despite everything, despite the broken ribs and the bullet wound and the grief that still sat heavy in her heart, she was going to be okay. They both were. "Come on," Katie said, squeezing Cole's hand. "Let's see what needs fixing first." Together they walked into the ranch house, ready to begin the hard work of building something new from the broken pieces of the past. And as Cole's arm settled protectively around her shoulders, Katie knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she wouldn't face them alone. The man who'd held her through the worst pain of her life would be there beside her, helping her heal, helping her rebuild, helping her become whole again. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and red, and for the first time in months, Katie Morgan allowed herself to hope. The future was uncertain, the work ahead was daunting, and the scars would never fully fade. But she was alive, she was healing, and she had someone who cared enough to stay. In the harsh reality of frontier life, that was more than most people ever got. And it was enough. The first month back at the ranch tested Katie's resolve more than she'd anticipated. Every morning brought new challenges, physical reminders of just how much damage her body had sustained. Cole had insisted on hiring 2 ranch hands, brothers named Jake and Ben Carter, who'd worked spreads across the territory. They were good men, hard workers, who asked few questions about what had happened. Katie threw herself into the work with fierce determination. She mended fences despite the ache in her ribs, organized the recovered cattle despite the exhaustion that still plagued her. Cole watched her carefully, stepping in when he saw her pushing too hard, but smart enough to know she needed this, needed to prove to herself that she was still capable, still the woman her father had raised. One afternoon, about 6 weeks after they'd returned to the ranch, Katie was in the barn checking on a pregnant mare when pain suddenly lanced through her chest, different from the usual ache, sharper and more alarming. She gasped and stumbled, catching herself against a stall door. The mare nickered nervously, sensing distress. Cole appeared almost instantly, as if he had a sixth sense for when Katie was in trouble. What happened? His hands were on her shoulders, steadying her, his eyes searching her face. "Nothing," Katie tried to say, but another wave of pain cut off her words. She pressed a hand to her ribs, feeling her heart racing. "Just overdid it, I think." Cole didn't argue. He simply scooped her up, ignoring her protests, and carried her to the house. He deposited her on the sofa and went to fetch the medical kit the doctor had sent with them. "Let me check the ribs," he said firmly. Katie wanted to refuse, to insist she was fine, but the pain was too insistent. She let Cole help her out of her work shirt, down to the thin undershirt beneath. His hands were gentle as he examined the site of her old injury, probing carefully for any new damage. Katie watched his face, saw the concentration there, the concern. "I don't think you broke anything new," Cole said finally, relief evident in his voice. "But you've been pushing too hard." "The doctor said it would take 6 months for full healing, Katie. It's only been 3.5. I can't just sit around," Katie said, frustration making her voice sharp. "The ranch needs work. We're already behind on preparing for winter." "The ranch will still be here when you're healed," Cole countered. He sat beside her, his expression serious. "But if you push yourself into a relapse, if you damage your lung again, there might not be another miracle recovery." He took her hand. "I need you to..." The genuine worry in his voice made Katie's anger deflate. She squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry. You're right. I just hate feeling weak." "You're not weak," Cole said firmly. "You're healing. There's a difference." He helped her lie back on the sofa, tucking a blanket around her. "Rest here for a bit. I'll finish up with the mare and have Jake handle the evening feeding." After Cole left, Katie lay there staring at the ceiling, frustrated with her own limitations. She had always been strong, capable, independent. Having to rely on others, having to admit her body wasn't ready for the demands she was placing on it, grated against everything she'd been taught. But she also knew Cole was right. Pushing too hard could undo all the healing she'd achieved. That evening, after the hands had left for the bunkhouse and the ranch was settling into night, Cole brought Katie a plate of stew and sat with her while she ate. They'd fallen into an easy companionship over the weeks, something that went beyond gratitude or obligation. Katie found herself looking forward to these quiet moments, when the day's work was done and they could just be. "Tell me about your brother," Katie said suddenly. She'd never asked before, sensing it was a painful subject, but she wanted to know. needed to understand the man who'd saved her life. Cole was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire crackling in the hearth. "Marcus," he finally said. "He was 5 years younger than me and had a ranch about 50 miles south of here." A sad smile crossed his face. He was supposed to be the responsible one. I was the drifter, the one who couldn't settle down. But Marcus, he had plans. Was engaged to a school teacher from Denver, planning a wedding. "What happened?" Katie asked gently. "Rodriguez gang hit his ranch about 4 months ago," Cole said, his voice hardening. "Marcus tried to defend his property, tried to protect his hands. They killed him and burned the ranch to the ground." He looked at Katie. "I was up in Montana when I got word. Took me 2 weeks to get back. By then, the gang was long gone, and the Rangers had no leads." "So you started tracking them yourself," Katie said, understanding now. "I made a promise at Marcus's grave. Said I'd bring every one of them to justice or die trying." He met Katie's eyes. "That's why I was in the area when they hit your ranch. I'd been following their trail for weeks, always one step behind." His hand found hers. "I'm sorry I didn't get there sooner. Maybe I could have saved your father." "You saved me," Katie said firmly, "and you helped bring them down. Your brother would be proud." They sat in comfortable silence after that, hands linked, both lost in thoughts of those they'd lost. But there was something else growing between them, too, something neither had quite acknowledged yet, a connection forged in pain and survival, but becoming something deeper. As the weeks turned into months, the ranch slowly came back to life. The cattle herd grew as more strays were found and brought in. The fences got mended, the buildings repaired. Katie's strength returned gradually, and with Cole's help, she learned to pace herself, to listen to her body's warnings. The sharp pains became less frequent, the breathlessness faded. Her ribs were healing, truly healing this time. Winter came to the territory, bringing cold nights and occasional snow. The ranch work changed but didn't stop. Katie and Cole fell into an easy partnership, their skills complementing each other. He was better with the horses, she had a knack for the cattle. He could fix almost anything mechanical, she knew every inch of the land. Together, they made the ranch work. One evening in early December, Katie was in the barn checking on the animals before bed when she heard raised voices from outside. She moved to the door and saw 3 riders approaching the ranch house. Her hand instinctively went to her revolver, but then she recognized the lead rider, Sheriff Thompson from town, along with 2 deputies. Cole emerged from the house, his posture alert but not hostile. Katie joined him, feeling the familiar ache in her ribs from the cold air. "Sheriff," Cole greeted, "what brings you out here this late?" "Need to talk to you both," Thompson said, dismounting. He was a big man, weathered and no nonsense, but fair. "It's about the Rodriguez trial." They all moved into the house, and the sheriff accepted coffee while his deputies waited outside. "Carlos Rodriguez is going to trial next week," Thompson explained. "The prosecutor wants both of you to testify. Katie about the raid on your ranch, Cole about tracking the gang, and the final confrontation." Katie felt her stomach tighten. She'd known this was coming, but facing Carlos Rodriguez in court, reliving everything that had happened, was a daunting prospect. "Of course," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Whatever's needed to put him away." "There's something else," Thompson said, looking uncomfortable. "Carlos's lawyer is claiming self-defense. Says you 2 ambushed them, that the stampede was an act of aggression. He's trying to paint the gang as victims." Cole's jaw tightened. "That's ridiculous. They murdered Katie's father, stole her cattle, and would have killed her if they'd caught her. I know that, you know that, and the prosecutor knows that," Thompson agreed. "But juries can be unpredictable. The lawyer's going to try to make Katie look vengeful, claim she wanted blood and manipulated you into helping her." He looked at Katie sympathetically. "He's going to bring up your injuries, suggest you were too hurt to know what you were doing, that Cole took advantage of your vulnerability." Katie felt anger surge through her. "That's not what happened." "I believe you," Thompson said, "but you need to be prepared for what's coming. It's not going to be pleasant." After the sheriff left, Katie paced the living room, too agitated to sit still. Cole watched her, understanding her need to move despite the late hour. "We knew this wouldn't be easy," he said quietly. "I know," Katie replied, "but to have them twist everything, to make it sound like we're the criminals when they murdered my father?" She stopped pacing, pressing a hand to her ribs where phantom pain throbbed. "What if the jury believes them?" Cole stood and crossed to her, his hands settling on her shoulders. "Then we tell the truth. We lay out exactly what happened step by step, and we trust that justice will prevail." He pulled her into a gentle embrace, careful of her still healing ribs. "You're not alone in this, Katie. Whatever happens in that courtroom, we face it together. Katie leaned into his strength, letting herself draw comfort from his presence. Over the months, Cole had become more than a partner, more than a friend. She trusted him in ways she'd never trusted anyone, even her father. He'd proven himself time and again, not just in the dramatic moments of rescue and revenge, but in the quiet daily ways he showed he cared. The week before the trial was tense. Katie found herself reliving the raid in her nightmares, waking gasping and clutching her ribs. Each time Cole was there, having moved into the guest room to be close in case she needed him. He'd sit with her in the dark, holding her hand, talking in low, calm tones until the panic subsided and she could breathe normally again. The day of the trial arrived cold and gray. Katie dressed carefully in her best dress, one of a few things that had survived the raid. Cole wore a suit that made him look unfamiliar and uncomfortable, but his eyes were the same, steady and reassuring. They rode into town together, Jake and Ben staying behind to mind the ranch. The courthouse was packed. Katie recognized faces from town, people who'd known her father, people who'd helped in the aftermath of the raid, but there were also strangers, people drawn by the sensational nature of the case. And there, at the defense table, sat Carlos Rodriguez. He looked thinner than Katie remembered, harder. When his eyes met hers, there was no remorse, only cold calculation. The trial lasted 3 days. Katie testified on the second day, walking through every detail of the raid. The prosecutor was gentle but thorough, establishing the timeline, the violence, the premeditation of the Rodriguez gang's attack. Katie kept her voice steady, her account clear and factual. When she described her father's death, she felt tears threaten but blinked them back. She wouldn't give Carlos the satisfaction of seeing her break. Then came the cross-examination. Carlos's lawyer was a slick man from back east, all smooth words and subtle insinuations. "Miss Morgan," he began, his tone dripping false sympathy, "you sustained serious injuries during these alleged events, did you not?" "Yes," Katie replied. "Broken ribs and a gunshot wound. And yet, despite these severe injuries, you claim you participated in an armed assault on my client's camp just days later?" The lawyer's tone suggested this was impossible. "I did," Katie said firmly. "Isn't it true, Miss Morgan, that you were in extreme pain, possibly delirious from your injuries, that you may not have fully understood what Mr. Bennett was asking you to do?" Katie felt anger flash through her. "I knew exactly what I was doing. I was getting justice for my murdered father." "Justice?" the lawyer pounced. "Or revenge? Isn't it true that you wanted these men dead regardless of whether they'd actually harmed your father?" The prosecutor objected, and the judge sustained it, but the damage was done. The lawyer had planted the seed of doubt, suggested that Katie was driven by vengeance rather than justice. The questioning continued, each question designed to chip away at her credibility, to paint her as either a victim too injured to think clearly or a vengeful woman who'd manipulated Cole into helping her commit violence. By the time Katie stepped down from the witness stand, she felt exhausted and angry. She'd told the truth, but she could see some of the jurors looking at her with uncertainty. Cole squeezed her hand as she sat back down, his presence a silent promise that, regardless of what anyone else thought, he believed her. Cole testified the next day. He was calm and factual, walking through his months of tracking the Rodriguez gang, the evidence he'd gathered of their crimes. He described finding Katie, the decision to go after the gang, the planning and execution of the stampede. Unlike Katie, he showed no emotion, just presented the facts as if reading from a report. The defense lawyer tried the same tactics on him, but Cole was harder to rattle. When asked if he'd taken advantage of Katie's vulnerable state, Cole looked the man dead in the eye and said, "Miss Morgan is the strongest, bravest person I've ever met. The idea that anyone could manipulate her into doing anything she didn't want to do is insulting to her and frankly ridiculous." When the lawyer suggested Cole had personal motivations that clouded his judgment, Cole didn't deny it. "Yes," he said, "the Rodriguez gang murdered my brother, but that doesn't change the facts of what they did to the Morgan Ranch, or what they've done to dozens of other families across this territory." The closing arguments came on the third day. The prosecutor laid out a clear case of murder, theft, and conspiracy. The defense continued to push the narrative of self-defense and suggested that Katie and Cole were vigilantes who'd taken the law into their own hands. The judge's instructions to the jury were thorough, emphasizing the need to consider all the evidence. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Katie and Cole waited in the courthouse, unable to leave, unable to do anything but sit and worry. Other witnesses and townspeople drifted in and out, offering support or just curious about the outcome. Katie's ribs ached from the stress, and she had to remind herself to breathe normally. Finally, the jury returned. The courtroom fell silent as the foreman stood. In the case of the Territory versus Carlos Rodriguez, on the charge of murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. Relief washed over Katie so powerfully she felt dizzy. Cole's arm came around her shoulders, steadying her. The verdict continued, guilty on all charges. Carlos Rodriguez would hang for his crimes. It wasn't perfect justice, couldn't bring back the dead or undo the harm done, but it was something. It was accountability. As they left the courthouse, several townspeople stopped to congratulate them, to express their relief that the Rodriguez gang's reign of terror was truly over. But Katie barely heard them. She just wanted to go home, back to the ranch, back to the life she and Cole were building together. They rode in silence for the first hour, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, as the ranch came into view in the distance, Cole spoke. "How are you feeling?" Katie considered the question. How was she feeling? "Tired," she said honestly. "Relieved. Sad." She paused. "My ribs hurt." Cole glanced at her with concern. "When we get back, you should rest. This has been a lot of stress." "Later?" Katie said. She wanted to check on the ranch first, to ground herself in the familiar routine of work and animals and land, but as they rode into the yard, she noticed something was off. The barn door was open when it should have been closed. The chickens were scattered when they should have been penned. Cole noticed it too. His hand went to his gun. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. They dismounted cautiously, and Cole moved toward the barn. Katie followed despite his warning, her own revolver drawn. As they approached, they heard voices inside. Then Jake emerged, looking relieved. "Boss, thank God you're back. We've got a situation." Inside the barn, they found Ben kneeling beside a woman. She was young, maybe 18, with dark hair and terrified eyes. Blood stained her dress, and she cradled her arm against her chest. "Found her about an hour ago," Jake explained. "She rode in half dead. Horse collapsed in the yard. We got her in here, and we're trying to figure out what to do." Katie holstered her gun and knelt beside the girl. "What's your name?" "Elena," the girl whispered. "Elena Vasquez. Please, you have to help me." "They're coming." "Who's coming?" Cole asked, his tone gentle but urgent. "The rest of the gang," Elena said, tears streaming down her face. "Carlos's cousins. They heard about the trial, about him being found guilty. They're coming for revenge. They're coming here." Katie and Cole exchanged a look. They'd thought it was over, that with Diego dead and Carlos convicted, the Rodriguez gang was finished. But apparently, the tentacles reached further than they'd known. "When?" Katie asked. "Tomorrow, maybe the day after," Elena said. "They were gathering men when I escaped. 20, maybe more." She grabbed Katie's hand with her good one. "I'm sorry. I was with them. I know that's wrong, but when I heard they were planning to attack your ranch, to kill everyone here, I couldn't let that happen. Not after what you did, stopping Diego and Carlos." Katie squeezed the girl's hand. "You did the right thing coming here." She looked at Cole. "We need to prepare." What followed was a blur of activity. Katie sent Jake to town to alert the sheriff and ask for help. Ben began fortifying the ranch house and barn, boarding up windows and creating defensible positions. Cole checked their ammunition and weapons, taking inventory of what they had. Elena, despite her injuries, insisted on helping, her knowledge of the remaining gang members proving invaluable in planning their defense. Katie worked alongside them all, ignoring the pain in her ribs, ignoring Cole's worried glances. They'd been through too much to lose everything now. The ranch had survived one attack. It would survive another. As night fell, Katie found herself standing on the porch looking out at the land her father had worked so hard to build. Cole joined her, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He offered her one, and they stood in silence for a moment. "We could leave," Cole said quietly. "Load up what we can carry and head north. Start over somewhere else." Katie shook her head. "This is my home. My father's legacy." "I'm not running." "I know," Cole said with a slight smile. "But I had to offer." He took her hand. "Whatever comes tomorrow, we face it together, like we have everything else." Katie turned to look at him, really look at him. This man who'd saved her life, who'd stood by her through injury and recovery, through trials and threats, who'd somehow become the most important person in her world. "Cole," she said softly, "when this is over, when we've dealt with whoever's coming, I think we should talk. About us." Cole's expression softened. "I'd like that," he said. Then, surprising her, he leaned down and kissed her forehead gently. "But first, we survive tomorrow. Then we can figure out everything else." The night passed slowly, everyone taking shifts to keep watch. Katie tried to rest but found sleep impossible. Her ribs ached. a reminder of the last battle she'd fought. But she was stronger now, more healed. And this time she wasn't alone and injured. This time she had warning, preparation, and good people standing with her. Dawn came pale and cold. In the distance, a dust cloud appeared on the horizon. The enemy was coming, just as Elena had warned. Katie checked her weapons. One final time, positioned herself at a window Cole had reinforced. Around her, the others did the same. Jake and Ben had proved themselves reliable and brave. Elena, despite her injuries, had a rifle and a grim determination to make up for her past mistakes. And Cole was there, solid and unshakable, positioned where he could see the entire approach to the ranch. He caught Katie's eye and nodded once, a gesture of solidarity and trust. She nodded back, feeling a strange calm settle over her. "My ribs are already broken," she whispered to herself, a reminder that she'd survived worse. That pain was temporary, but giving up was permanent. Her father had taught her to be strong. Cole had taught her she didn't have to be strong alone. The riders came closer, and Katie raised her rifle. Whatever happened next, she was ready. The ranch had become more than just her father's legacy. It was her future, hers and Cole's, and she'd defend it with everything she had. The battle, when it came, was fierce but shorter than expected. Sheriff Thompson had brought deputies and several armed townsmen, arriving just as the gang attacked. Caught between the defenders and the ranch and the lawmen behind them, the attackers quickly found themselves outnumbered and outgunned. Several surrendered immediately. Others tried to fight and were cut down. By noon, it was over. Katie emerged from the ranch house, ribs aching but intact, to find Cole directing the cleanup. Bodies needed removing, prisoners needed securing, damage needed assessing. She walked to him, placing a hand on his arm. He turned, and the relief in his eyes was profound. "It's really over now," he said. Katie nodded. "Yeah, it really is." She looked around at the ranch, damaged but standing. Time to rebuild, again. "Together," Cole said, making it both statement and question. "Together," Katie agreed. And this time when he kissed her, it wasn't her forehead but her lips, gentle and full of promise. The months that followed were peaceful, focused on healing both physical and emotional wounds. Katie's ribs finally truly healed. The ranch prospered, and slowly, carefully, Katie and Cole built something together that went beyond partnership, beyond friendship. They built a future. On a warm spring day, nearly a year after Cole had first found Katie bleeding in the desert, they stood together on the ranch land and made promises to each other. Simple promises, heartfelt and true. To stand together through whatever came. To build a life worthy of those they'd lost. To hold each other through the pain, whatever form it took. Katie Morgan, now Katie Bennett, looked at her husband and felt something she'd thought lost forever. Peace, hope, home. Her ribs had healed, the scars faded, but the strength she'd found in the breaking and healing remained, and that made all the difference.